Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The History Squad. Now today we're on location in the town where I grew up, the city of Lichfield, Staffordshire in England. And I just wanted to show you the place, a little building where I had my very first job. Lichfield Cathedral. And I'm going to show you one or two of the little secrets that I learnt about this wonderful cathedral, which was also a bit of a fortress. Now you notice the cathedral has three spires, the main spire and the two smaller ones. Now there are two thoughts on this. One is that the stonemasons just went overboard. The other is that the main spire represents the ancient Archbishop of Lichfield, and the other two, the smaller ones, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Archbishop of York. The three P's of Lichfield, it's known as locally. So when I first left school, and we're going back a few years now, I worked for a stonemason company called Bridgman's and Sons. I was never going to be a stonemason. I was asking too many questions. I was always too busy, so I had to leave eventually and join the army. But they had me working on the top of the roof there, and I had to straddle the apex of the roof, go all the way along the top of the cathedral there, checking the flashing, checking for any cracked or broken slates. And when we get to the far end, the gaffer I was working for, he leaned against the wall and he says, "You do know that that is the height of the original cathedral roof?" And I looked at him and says, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, because when the spire was fetched down during the Civil War, it came crashing down through the roof. So when they rebuilt it, they rebuilt a lower roof at a cheaper cost." You can also see it on the north transept. I've walked that roof as well. And if you look just in where the building is, there's a tiny little bridge that is used by the masons and the workers on the cathedral. There's lots of these little passages to and from. And if you backtrack along, all the way along, there's a tiny little door at the end. And that lets people who are working on the roof in and out in all the different ways that we can go. Do you know there's been a cathedral on this site for over 1300 years? That's amazing. 700 AD, Bishop Hedder was the guy who dedicated the first cathedral on this site. It was to house the bones of St. Chad. He was the guy, the first Bishop of Lichfield, who brought Christianity to us heathens from around here, the Mercians. He was actually from Lindisfarne, way up in the north of Northumbria. And the church, the cathedral, was simply built to house his bones so pilgrims could come to the site and pay their respects. So for 400 years the pilgrims used to make their way here, and it became more and more famous. Apparently a priest would hold up the skull in St. Chad's chapel or wherever it was in the church in those days to show the pilgrims, who would then pray. And it is quite amazing because it just needed to have a bigger cathedral. So the Normans started one in 1085. So the Normans now, they're taking over, they're building their version of the cathedral. But come the medieval times, the 1140s, the masons here, the stonemasons, they dismantled the Norman church and began work on this Gothic cathedral that we have today. Some people say they went overboard. There are so many Gothic arches, there are so many statues. There's one thing I love about this cathedral, is there are always 1,000 eyes looking at you. Doesn't matter where you are, somewhere, some statue, some eyes are looking down on you. Everywhere you go, the little heads carved, some of them laughing, some of them in their medieval headgear, some are kings, but there are hundreds of them, always looking down on you. Now work only stopped 1349, the time of the Black Death. That actually finished the work here, and the cathedral stands as testament to those masons of those days, those stonemasons. And the statues, many of them that had to be replaced after the Civil War, were made by the very company that I worked for in my short career as a bit of a labourer for them. This is one of my favourite spots on Lichfield Cathedral on the outside. I used to often come and sit here as a kid. This is the entranceway to the north transept, and the carvings here are absolutely unbelievable. When you consider hundreds and hundreds of years ago the stonemasons working on these. And also there is a statue of St. Chad himself. That's a much later addition, but you can see there is a pigeon nesting on his shoulders. In this northwest part of the cathedral, you have a couple of kings. William the Conqueror, there he is with his sword, the Great Conqueror, and under his arm, the Doomsday Book. And next to him, William II. And I love this because he's got a bow in his hand, because on the 2nd of August, 1100, he was shot by accident with an arrow whilst hunting in the New Forest. That's just a reminder of how you died. Have a bow in your hand. It does make me smile. I'm looking up here, there are gargoyles looking back. But what I like is all of the flying buttresses. They're on both sides of the cathedral. And they're a beautiful invention because they simply keep the walls together. So one of the little secrets here. So I was brought to this part of the cathedral right at the front by one of the old master stonemasons at Bridgman's, and he said, St. James the Less, this statue, there's a bit of a secret. Look at the broom handle. He said when they tried to replace it with stone, it kept breaking. So they replaced it with a broom handle, which they just plastered over in stone. Now, I don't know if that's true or whether he was spinning me a yarn, but after all these years, it still looks like a broom handle. And when I was told the story, that was over 50 years ago. Now look at the incredible craftsmanship that's gone into making the ironwork on this door. Let's go and take a look inside. We're in the nave, the central part of the cathedral. Nowadays there are chairs or wooden pews for people to sit on. In the medieval times you had to stand, I'm afraid. This is quite incredible. When you look down you can see the dividing screen. That's just on the crossing part of the cathedral. Beyond that you have the choir and the presbytery and the altar, the sacred part of the cathedral. But if you look up you will see the most wonderful ceiling. It is a replacement after the Civil War due to the spire coming down and bringing the ceilings with it, but they are quite magnificent. Now on the left and right of the nave you have the north and south aisle, and above them, as you can see through those dark windows, you have a corridor. Now I've been into most of these corridors and rooms, and I got into big trouble in one of them because I found some broken shards of cannonballs and musket balls, and I'm about to move them out of the way when I am told, leave them alone, Kevin, they've been there 300 years, don't disturb them. That was my problem with Bridgman's. I was always asking questions. It's really sad when you see some of the effigies and the damage that's been done to them. It was done during the Civil War when the parliamentarians had their cathedral. They used their swords to hack pieces off some of the effigies, destroy things that we would value today. But you look at these heads. I just love them. They are so, well, they give you an idea what people look like at the time. I mean, this guy here, you look at his face. Who was he? Was he a mason? Was he an old guy? Just look at the character in that face. Perfect. And then we have a knight, possibly a crusader there with his chain mail, and then a lady, obviously a lady of wealth. A king-looking character there. Princes. You know, there are so many of these heads all over the cathedral. It's said that it's impossible to count them all. In the south transept of the cathedral, you'll find the Zulu War or South African War memorial for the Staffordshire Regiment. As a little boy, I used to look up at these. You know, I'd heard the stories, seen the film Zulu. I was told that the actual spearheads were original, but I'm not sure. But I've run my fingers over the names of these men. It really means something to me. Staffordshire Regiment was the first cap badge I ever wore. And you can see the standards there, going all the way back. Some of them at the top there, going back to the 1800s at least, possibly even before then. Quite incredible, the amount of men who have fought and marched under those standards. We're going over to the north part of the cathedral, to the chapter house. I suppose they're treasure house because it contains some of the most wonderful treasures of the cathedral. And there's one piece here which is just so fabulous. It's a stone carving. 200 years at least before the Battle of Hastings in 1066. They think it depicts Gabriel, the archangel. And part of the carving is missing, which would have been Mary, Jesus' mother. But if you look close, he's, I think, carrying an olive branch of peace, and his hand is in the symbol of peace, Pax Vobiscum and all of that. This was found in modern times underneath a floorboard. So it was hidden well over 1,000 years ago, they reckon. Quite wonderful when you consider this is a Saxon carving. And what we have here are the St Chad's Gospels. These are quite wonderful. They're younger than the Lindisfarne Gospels, but older than the Book of Kells. I think they were written 730 AD. A real treasure indeed. And as a little boy, I remember looking at these and wondering, how on earth did the monks manage to write these, keeping their lines straight? What a treasure indeed. So here we are at the far end of the cathedral, the eastern end, the Lady Chapel with its imposing altar. Just look at all of that stained glass. It is quite incredible. And when you consider that during the Civil War, it was all blown through. But here we have the Herken Road stained glass. These were taken from an abbey that was defunct in the Low Countries in Belgium. They were packed away in crates, ready to be sold. And a passing Englishman, Sir Brooke Boothby, he purchased a lot for £200 in those days, £10,000 nowadays, transported it across and sold it to the Diocese of Lichfield at cost price. And here it stands, absolutely wonderful. You see that door there? That can take you right the way up a spiral staircase, or it can bring you out on the balcony. I've walked along here and just marvelled at the colour, the brilliance of these beautiful stained glass windows. Tucked away in the south choir aisle, you have this medieval paintings, the crucifixion. It's at least 600 years old, and when you see the condition of it, it's quite lovely. And these paintings were all covered up after the Reformation, so that this place would have been covered pre-Reformation with the most beautiful paintings, but afterwards all whitewashed walls. This is one of the paintings that they've managed to uncover. So just up from the crucifixion painting, you have the remains here of the Holy Trinity painting uncovered. You can see the colour in it. I mean, 600 years old, it is quite lovely. But what I like also here, you can see the remains in the wall of an archway that used to go over this lovely painting. There are still things to be uncovered in the cathedral, I'm sure. And just above it you have a stained glass window showing the cathedral being repaired, restored after the Civil War. It shows masons at work, stonemasons at work on the left panel. Then in the centre panel you have the architects themselves looking at all of the business. And of course to the right you have the money, the people who are paying for the job to be done. Oh, let's go in here. Oh, more heads. Look, there they are. Oh, it's a little bit dark, but let's explore. Follow me. Reputedly, this is where the priest would hold up the skull of St Chad to the pilgrims gathered below. Where we are now is in St Chad's Chapel. Nowadays, it's a place to sit and have a bit of peace, quiet and prayer. So 1642, England was torn apart by the Civil War. It later became widespread. Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales was embroiled in this terrible Civil War. And Lichfield, being in the centre of England, would play quite a prominent role. There were 3 sieges against the cathedral close. The first one, 1643, was by the Parliamentarian army, who came from the south there and attacked the close. Lord Brooke, the commander from Warwick Castle, was actually shot dead by a sniper, Dumdiat, from one of the battlements there. I've actually stood on the spot, they say, where this is where Dumdiat shot Lord Brooke. Apparently it's about 180 yards shot, and people go, yeah, that's ridiculous. However, Dumdiat, John Diet, I believe his name was a gamekeeper. So he would have been a crack shot, may have even had a rifled piece. So, Lord Brooke is dead. The parliamentarians do gain the cathedral, and it is then besieged, April 1643, by the Royalists under Rupert, Prince Rupert of the Rhine. So the third siege didn't happen until March 1646. Sir William Brereton's parliamentarian forces brought with them new kinds of artillery. Lichfield Close, the cathedral, had known relative peace since April 1643 because the Civil War had moved around the country, but now Parliament's army was back. The siege would last for 4 months and leave the cathedral in a terrible state. The garrison there would only surrender when Charles I himself handed himself over to Parliament. It wasn't until 1660, with the restoration of the monarchy, that they began to rebuild the cathedral after the destruction from the Civil War, and the patron of it was no other than the Merry Monarch, Charles II. And they had this statue cut for him, but they made it out of rubbish stone, and then they stuck it on the top of the cathedral where it got very badly weathered. I understand it was the 19th century that they fetched him down, and now he stands all weather worn, that Merry Monarch, eh? Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, our little visit to Lichfield Cathedral. If you did, like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the all notification buttons, because you never know what's going down the line with the History Squad. Before I go, a couple of mentions for our patrons. I've got it written down here: Michael Briggs and Zachary Miller. Hey guys, thanks a million.